celebrating 11 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Scott Niswonger.
Welcome to Anything is Possible. I'm Halloran Hilton Hill, and these are great stories about great people who prove with their lives that anything is possible. My guest today is Scott Niswonger. Thank you for joining us on the broadcast.
It's my pleasure.
What town did you grow up in Ohio?
I grew up in a little town called Van Wert, Ohio.
What?
In the middle of a cornfield in northwestern Ohio.
What and where is Van Wert?
Oh, it's between actually Fort Wayne, Indiana and Lima, Ohio. It's very close to the Indiana line. Just
Population?
10,000.
What was it like growing up there?
Oh, it was great. What a great time to grow up. As a child, you were riding your bike in the summertime. The time you got up, you were down at the neighborhood ballpark playing softball. Your mom would call you for supper. You'd go home and then reassemble with the kids every day. And my grandparents had a farm, and so I spent my summers on the farm. And it was just a wonderful time to grow up. We didn't face any of these problems that kids have to face today.
So you grew up in Mayberry, Ohio.
I sure did.
All right, so tell me about your mom, dad, brothers, and sisters.
Well, I grew up in a single-parent household. When my father came back from World War II, it didn't go very well, and my grandfather, who was a judge, had actually married my mother and dad when he was going into the service, and he ended up having to divorce them when he came back. It was a very difficult time for him.
How old were you?
A baby.
You were a baby?
I was a baby, and so I never really got to know him. Soon thereafter, he was killed in an automobile accident, and I never really got to meet my father.
Wow, so your mom didn't remarry, so...
No, it was...
So did your grandfather then fill the role of dad?
He did. My grandfather lived with us, and I've often said if I could be half the man that my grandfather was, I'd have a successful life.
What was his name?
His name was Frank Manship.
Tell me about Mr. Frank. What were the big blocks in the foundation of his character that made you aspire to be a man of that caliber?
Yeah. Well, I can remember as a young man, preteen, there would be somebody coming to our house every evening seeking the counsel of my grandfather. And I soon thereafter asked my what are we doing? I was sitting in and listening to all this, and helping widows with pension benefits and all these things. And he said, well, Scott, we have to give back of our time and our talent. It's not always going to be money, but it's those things you've learned in life that you can help others with. And so for me, that started at a very, very early age, paying attention to the needs of others.
Wow. Now you have brothers and sisters?
I'm it.
You're it.
Yeah.
You're an only child.
Broke the mold.
All right, so you grow up in this idyllic community. You have a grandfather that's a judge. He's a very principled man who is a giver. What then did you see as your possibility going forward? Did you want to be a judge? Did you want to be like him? Or did he create an environment, did he and your mom create an environment where you were free to explore whatever you wanted to do?
Well, growing up as a single-parent family, my mother pushed pretty hard to see that I was going to be independent. And so I was delivering papers when I was 11 or 12 years old. I always had an interest in business, which, no, I didn't want to become a judge. I wanted to actually become a pilot.
Wow.
And so
Why?
that led to, well, I can remember as a very young child seeing the airplanes let down into Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I thought, wow, how cool is that? I wonder where they're going. I wonder where they've been. And so they would take me to the local airport and would take me to Bearfield, and I started building model airplanes, and then I began to learn to fly. I took my first flying lesson at 12 years old. and soloed on my 16th birthday and was able to get my private license on my 17th birthday.
Wait a minute, you had a private pilot's license by 17?
I had a private pilot's license and had soloed before I had a driver's license.
What was it about you that they saw that made them say, we're willing to invest? Because that's an investment, to take you down and take a flying lesson at 12. Most kids want to go play ball.
In later years, my mom said she was absolutely scared to death, but she knew she had to let me do that. And so she knew where I was. I would always be at the airport. I wasn't much trouble growing up, and I was waxing and washing airplanes just to get a ride with one of the local private pilots in their plane and learn all I could.
Wow, and learn you did. My guest is Scott Niswonger. This is just the beginning of an unfolding and compelling story, because your life has been filled with planes and your life has been filled with giving. And we're going to talk more about that. And I'm interested to know a little bit more about your grandfather, because how long did he live before he passed away? We had just made a visit to Purdue University. And it was pretty obvious to me in later life that they saw something other than my high school transcript that wasn't all that valuable. They saw something in me of the desire to want to learn to fly that allowed me, as I always say, by the grace of God, I was accepted at Purdue University into their aviation program. Wow. Yeah. Let's take a break. When we come back, you're going to find out more. This is just the beginning of the story. Scott Niswonger is my guest. You're watching Anything is Possible.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
That was always my fascination, was with how other people built their businesses and how could we help them.
Welcome back to Anything is Possible. I'm Halloran Hilton Hill. My guest is Scott Niswonger. So we were talking about your love for flying. You fell in love, you start flying at 12, you have a private pilot's license by 17. So I guess that kind of put you in a flight plan for your life. You decided that's what you wanted to pursue all out.
So to speak, that was it. And the aviation degree at Purdue University, they were also an airline. And I think I may have told you this, that my second or third trip in the big airplane was to come pick up the University of Tennessee football team.
Really?
And fly them to a football game. They did obviously a lot of team flying with DC-6s, which were 54 passengers, and DC-3s, which were 24 passengers. Now, to the older folks in our audience, that'll conjure up some memories, because I was right at the end of the piston era, just before we moved into DC-9s, into the jet program, and I just wouldn't take anything for that experience of being at the end of the piston era flight.
Purdue has quite a program. After Purdue, what do you do?
Well, after Purdue, I went to work for a company called Magnavox that was then headquartered in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they had 7 corporate airplanes flying all different directions. And lo and behold, about a year into that, they decided to, my work at Magnavox, they decided to base an airplane in Tennessee, and I'd been there several times.
Right.
And they said, will you go down with a gentleman by the name of Ed Saylor, who then became my partner in my second business, and be based in Tennessee? And I said, I'd be happy to. Agricultural area, small town. I felt right at home in Greenville, just like I felt at home in Van Wert. It was wonderful, and it's been a great 40 years, more or less.
Wow, so you relocate to Greenville, you're flying for Magnavox, but Magnavox goes away.
They did, but I went away first.
What'd you do?
We had an opportunity to start a small charter service at the local airport there in Greenville that led to become an all-cargo airline with 38 freighters flying every night on a scheduled basis.
So how much did you have when you started this first business?
Not much. Not much. I had two doctors there that owned an airplane, and they would lease it to me by the hour, and I was able to hire a pilot and to fly that first little freighter aircraft. But then it grew into something rather large that we sold in 1980.
So you started with $2,000?
Well, that was the second
That's
business.
the second business.
Yeah.
Well, let me slow down then.
Yeah.
So this first business you start with little or nothing.
Yeah.
You were using somebody else's planes. You were maximizing. And then
right.
you built a business and you sold it?
The first business, Halloran, we actually would go to the customer, a company called TRW, the day after we had flown the freight to Detroit or South Bend, and we'd ask them to cut a hand-drawn check so we could buy fuel to fly the airplane that day.
Wow. How much were you, I don't know if you disclosed this or not, but how much were you able to sell the first business for?
Well, we didn't disclose that.
All right. But
not enough.
Not enough, all right. So then you start the second business with $2,000.
Yeah. In 1980, trucking was deregulated. And so all the people we were flying freight for, we went back to them and said, you know, at night now, we can move a truck 500 miles between airports for a fraction of the cost of actually flying the airplanes. You think of it as Federal Express over Memphis, with our hub was actually in Columbus, Ohio, with trucks moving in and out every night, freight being sorted and moving back. And that really started a trend that has carried forward to this day. That company was called Land Air.
How big did that company become?
That company became pretty big, and that's the one we started. Ed Saylor and I started the company. We opened a checking account with $2,000 apiece and put that in, and we had enough to live on for 6 months without any income stream. Fortunately,
it went
started
public
really quick, and within 12 years, we were able to take the company public. And today, the sales of the two companies are about $750 million.
A year?
A year.
Wow. $750 million a year. Now, this kid from Ohio that had the paper route, did you ever imagine a company that's doing close to $1 billion a year in business?
No. No.
How did you get there?
It was, as they say, the money was how you just keep score. It was all about the challenge of building a business, sitting down, talking to a customer, and so what keeps you awake at night? What is it you have that's not working right? And find a solution for their transportation. Today we call it logistics. Their logistics needs, what is it we can solve? And then come up with a solution, move on. They're great maintainers within our business and operating people, move on to the next customer. That was always my fascination, was with how other people built their businesses and how could we help them.
You know, what's interesting about that is, you know, as we talked about your grandfather and about his kind of solution mindset, people would come to him with their problems, with their challenges, seeking his counsel, and you've kind of taken that same thing in business. Tell me what keeps you up at night.
Yeah, that was exactly it. It just carried over.
So it wasn't about the money?
Childhood. No.
Really?
No, it's never been about the money. Now,
but you made a lot of it.
We've made a lot of it, and that's
how old were you when you became a millionaire?
About 40.
Wow. Did you expect that?
No.
Did you expect, as far as you've gone beyond that first million, did you? Because when I came up to visit you, I'm there at your house, I'm looking out, and to be honest with you, it seemed very ordinary.
Yeah.
Your life seemed very ordinary, right? I don't remember at any point during our time together that we had our pinkies up.
No. No, and you saw my eating habits.
Right.
I'm a hot dog and hamburger guy. No, it just, we're in the same house we've been in for 25 years. That's not it. Although I have an appreciation for airplanes and boats and things like that, No, it's fairly normal life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that normal. We need to take a break because I want to talk about giving. I want to talk about giving because for you, that's living, that's possibility.
That's my life.
Scott Niswonger is my guest. You're watching Anything is Possible. We'll be right back.
Coming up,
We have this for-profit transportation logistics company, sends its free cash flow to the Niswonger Foundation, and we reinvest that in our community.
Scott Niswonger is my guest this week on Anything is Possible, and he said, Halloran, I want you to come up to Greenville and spend some time because you won't get me unless you come see where I live and how I work and what it means. And I was stunned. I was stunned because I've heard of his corporate success. His companies are very successful and very good at what they do. But he spends most of his life giving. He has a foundation, and they do a lot of work in community. And so I decided to go up and spend half a day with them, which was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had in a long time.
Yeah, for me too.
I've seen, I saw your name on a lot of things, but your name being on a hospital or a foundation or that kind of thing, you really can't get how really invested you are in not only giving, but transforming your community. I mean, you could live anywhere, you could be anywhere, but you have chosen to give back. You showed me this model, actually. And so you had this one company that went public, and I guess that's Forward Air. And then there's another company, Land Air.
We both went public.
You both went public.
But we bought the little company, Land Air, back.
Right.
And it still owned a great deal of that.
So you own a lot of that.
Brought it back to actually fund our not-for-profit work. So we have this for-profit transportation logistics company, sends its free cash flow to the Niswonger Foundation, and we reinvest that in our community.
So just so you understand what he just said, he has a successful for-profit company, and the free cash flow goes into a foundation so he can give it away.
That's it. Well, and we apply the business principles that I've learned. It's called asset utilization in the transportation business. And so when the high school, we're building a new high school in our downtown, and there was a budget item for a 800-seat auditorium, a small group of us got together and said, wait a minute, we don't have a regional performing arts center. Let us add private money to that. And we did, and let's make that a regional performing arts center. And we have literally had everyone from the Oak Ridge Boys to the Beach Boys there to perform, and about half of our audience is from outside of Greene County. So it's an attraction, it's an economic attraction to our community to be able to do those kind of things.
But who does that? I mean, you're giving away most of what this company is making.
Yes. Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's the right thing to do. And the opportunities are so great, and such a wonderful place to live and work. To be able to build an indoor soccer facility for Tusculum College when we didn't have that in the region, and then allow our YMCA league and the little kids to use that when Tusculum's not using it. To build the baseball stadium, but we build it saying, we'll do that for the college baseball team, but we're going to add a minor league team to attract people. It's all about quality of life. And when an economic prospect, somebody looking to move or build a plant within our region comes to Greenville, we show pretty well. And it's about job creation. We're in a region that has about a 10% unemployment. And so having Walter State and Tusculum there that are pretty nimble, can customize training programs for new business and industry and existing business and industry, we can move pretty quickly within our community. And some larger towns can't do that.
Tell me about your wife and family.
Okay. Well, they put up with a lot. Nikki and I actually went to the high school, a junior-senior prom together in Van Wert, and went our separate ways for about 15 years, and then got back together. And we have 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, all gainfully employed, I might add, and 2 of them teachers. And my attraction toward education, particularly K through 12 within our region, these very tiny schools that couldn't afford advanced courses, languages, art, all of the things you would expect in a larger school. We've been able to help and add those to these small schools, but primarily through something called distance-based learning, which makes delivery of all these advanced courses affordable to a little school called Clinch that has 53 students up in Hawkins County. Sneedville up in Hancock County. They're kind of landlocked.
So you're really trying to create possibility.
We are. We've been able to put 29 distance-based learning facilities. That's an interactive classroom where we could be 100 miles or 1,000 miles apart and having this same conversation just interactively between those schools. This morning, Mandarin Chinese was being taught live in Greenville High School and being pumped into 4 or 5 other high school settings at the same time.
What would your grandfather think of you?
Well, I hope he'd be pleased with almost everything, but had it not been for him, I don't know where I would have been. But he and both my mother were so supportive of me as a young person. They never thought there weren't things you couldn't do.
Right, they saw possibility.
They saw it. They saw the possibility and encouraged it.
Well, thank you for being here today, and thank you for all the possibility that you are creating where you are. And I'm glad that your mom had you.
Well, I am. I am too.
You've been a blessing to our planet.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
We'll see you next time on Anything is Possible.